Sometimes life throws us into moments so strange, so unexpected, that they feel like more than just coincidence. A delay that saves us from harm, a door that closes only to push us toward another we never imagined. An encounter, a loss, a sudden change, something that shakes us, and we're left standing there asking, why? But deep down, many of us know this isn't random. This isn't just bad luck or good timing. This is something bigger. This is purpose. This is alignment. This is a sign from God. When we're too focused on control, on our plans and expectations, we forget that there's a greater hand at work, one that sees beyond our limited view. We don't always get what we want, but we are always being guided toward what we need. God doesn't always speak in loud voices or obvious miracles. Sometimes He speaks through silence, through interruption, through a mistake that turns out to be the very thing that saves you, the very thing that wakes you up, the very thing that changes your life. So the next time you feel like you've hit a wall, like everything's falling apart, take a moment, step back, look again. What if it's not an accident? What if it's divine timing? What if it's grace in disguise? Faith isn't about having all the answers, it's about trusting when you don't, believing even when you can't see the full picture, and learning to listen not just with your ears but with your spirit. Because some moments are more than just moments, some turns are more than just detours, and some events are more than just accidents. Life's unexpected events often carry deeper meaning. What feels like coincidence may actually be divine alignment or redirection. We live in a world that teaches us to believe in logic, order, and planning. We're told that success comes from hard work, strategy, and preparation, and to a great extent that's true. But there are moments in life that go beyond human effort. A chance meeting, a missed opportunity, a delay, an illness, a breakup, a sudden shift. All of these can feel random on the surface, but beneath them may lie a deeper purpose that we only come to understand in hindsight. There's a point where reason ends and faith begins. You might be going about your day thinking everything is on track, and suddenly everything changes. Maybe you didn't get the job you were sure was meant for you. Maybe a relationship ended just when you thought it was heading towards something permanent. In those moments, it's natural to feel confused, even angry. But sometimes the very things we see as setbacks are really divine interventions. God's way of steering us away from something not meant for us and towards something greater, something unseen. We often try to make sense of our lives with the limited view we have. But imagine trying to judge a story by reading just one page. You wouldn't understand the characters, the plot, or the purpose. That's how it is with life. We're living it one moment at a time. What feels like a detour is often the exact path you're supposed to take. When we experience unexpected change, our first instinct is often to fight it. We panic, we question, we resist. But growth often begins in the uncomfortable places. It's in the moments we didn't plan for, the ones that disrupt our lives, that our faith is tested, our character is shaped, and our purpose starts to emerge more clearly. These aren't accidents. These are turning points, moments where heaven touches earth quietly, and if we're paying attention, we'll realize that something holy is happening. Many people can look back on a painful moment in their lives and say, at the time, I didn't understand it, but now I see why it happened. That's the gift of perspective. But faith invites us to trust even before we have that perspective, to believe that there's meaning even when everything feels meaningless. To accept that just because we didn't choose the moment, it doesn't mean it isn't chosen for us. And more often than not, those unexpected, painful, or confusing moments become the most defining chapters in our story. There are times when we encounter delays and frustrations that feel like roadblocks, but they are actually divine pauses. A job you didn't get may have spared you from stress, burnout, or an environment that would have drained your spirit. A person who walked away may have made space for someone who will love and value you more deeply. A failed plan might have opened your life to something more aligned with who you really are. We tend to see these things only in retrospect, but even while they're happening, we can begin to shift our thinking from why is this happening to me to what is this preparing me for? God's timing rarely matches our own, and His ways often confuse us in the moment. But what we call interruptions may actually be His interventions. It works in the silence behind the scenes, aligning things in ways we couldn't imagine. That one delay might connect us with the right person at the right time. That disappointment may birth a strength in us we didn't know we had. That closed door might be the exact moment that protects our peace or redirects us toward purpose. When we begin to view life through the lens of faith, even the painful parts take on new meaning. They stop being things we try to forget and instead become things we learn from. Our heartbreak becomes a teacher, our failure becomes fuel, our confusion becomes a call to trust. We realize that nothing is wasted, not even the suffering, because all of it is being used, shaped, and transformed by God into something purposeful. So when life takes an unexpected turn, don't rush to label it as a mistake. Don't assume it's all falling apart. Instead, pause, breathe. Ask what it might be trying to show you, teach you, or prepare you for. Often the very event you didn't want is the one that leads you exactly where you need to be. Not because you planned it, but because a higher power aligned. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect or denying your emotions. It's about choosing to believe there's something bigger happening, even if you can't see it yet. When you start to live with that kind of awareness, life begins to feel less chaotic and more connected. You start to recognize the divine fingerprints all over your story. Because in the end, what may feel like coincidence is often anything but. Life's unexpected events carry deeper meaning, not by accident, but by design. A sign, a signal, a quiet whisper from God saying, "Trust me, I'm still writing your story." God communicates in subtle, often surprising ways. Not all signs come through miracles. Some come through silence, closed doors, or interruptions. Many of us grow up expecting that divine guidance will appear in some dramatic form, a vision, a voice, an unmistakable miracle that leaves no doubt. And while those moments do happen, His voice is gentle, not forceful. It doesn't always shake the ground beneath us. Sometimes it whispers quietly into our hearts. In the noise of modern life, we often miss these subtle signals. We're so busy moving, achieving, and planning that we don't leave space for stillness. And yet it is often in that quiet when we are forced to slow down, or when life doesn't go according to plan, that God begins to reveal Himself. It could be God protecting us from something we cannot see, or redirecting us towards something better that we haven't even imagined. Closed doors are among the most misunderstood forms of divine communication. When something we hoped for falls through, a job we don't get, a relationship that ends, a dream that doesn't come to life, we assume we've been abandoned or forgotten. But sometimes the no we receive is really a deeper yes in disguise. A yes to something more fitting, more aligned, and more transformative. God doesn't slam doors out of cruelty, He closes them out of care. He sees the bigger picture, the long road ahead, and He knows what fits into the journey He's preparing for us. Interruptions are another way God speaks. We don't like being interrupted. by illness, by failure, by unexpected changes. But those interruptions often carry messages that couldn't reach us any other way. We're creatures of habit and control. And sometimes the only way God can get our attention is by breaking our rhythm. When things fall apart or plans change suddenly, we're forced to reflect. We begin asking deeper questions. We start listening. And that moment of listening may be the very space where God is able to speak clearly to our hearts. Silence, too, is one of the most profound ways God communicates. It's also one of the hardest to understand. When we pray and hear nothing, when we seek direction and receive no clear answer, we can feel abandoned or ignored. But silence is not absence. It is often a time of preparation. God's silence may be telling us to wait, to trust. In the silence, we are invited to rely less on external affirmation and more on internal faith. That kind of growth doesn't come easily, but it is powerful. It builds the kind of trust that doesn't waver when life is uncertain. We often expect God's signs to be clear, dramatic, or immediate. But the truth is that divine communication is more like a gentle unfolding than a lightning strike. It happens through people we meet by chance, who end up changing our lives. Through books we happen to read, songs we hear at just the right time, or conversations that stir something deep in us. It happens through the timing of events we didn't control and through the emotions we can't explain. These are not random moments. They are often God's way of nudging us, guiding us, and reminding us that we're not alone. Recognizing these signs requires us to slow down and tune in. We have to learn to listen with more than just our ears. We have to pay attention to what feels persistent in our spirit, to the moments that stir our soul, even if they don't make immediate sense. Sometimes God's message isn't about clarity, it's about trust. Trusting that He's working even when we don't see it. Trusting that the delay, the detour, or the denial is still part of His divine plan. And when we do begin to recognize God's subtle communication, something inside us shifts. We become more attuned to the sacred in everyday life. We start to see interruptions, not as punishments, but as redirections. We learn that silence isn't empty, it's filled with purpose. And we begin to find comfort in the closed doors, knowing that what is meant for us will not pass us by. Faith, at its core, is about relationship. And just like in any relationship, communication isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's in the little things, the daily moments that seem ordinary, but upon reflection are full of divine presence. God is always speaking. If we learn to look beyond our expectations of how God should speak, we'll find that He's been communicating all along. In the timing we didn't expect, in the peace that comes for no reason, in the strength we feel when we should have broken. These are His words without sound, His answers without explanation, His love quietly guiding us home. So the next time you face silence, a closed door, an interruption, don't rush to frustration. Instead, pause and listen with your heart. You might just find that God is speaking softly, clearly, and faithfully, just in a way you didn't expect. Difficult moments can be divine guidance. Pain, loss, or failure may be the very tools God uses to steer us toward growth or protection. It's not always easy to see it that way when we're in the middle of suffering. When life falls apart, when something we deeply wanted slips through our fingers, or when we feel like we failed completely, the natural reaction is to ask why. Why is this happening to me? Why now? Why does it hurt so much? In those moments, it rarely feels like guidance. It feels more like punishment or abandonment. But with time and reflection, many people begin to see that what they thought was the end was actually the beginning of something more meaningful. Pain has a way of getting our attention. It cuts through the noise of routine and comfort and forces us to take a closer look at ourselves, our choices, and the path we're on. Often, we don't change until we're uncomfortable enough that we have no choice. That discomfort might come through heartbreak, disappointment, rejection, or even a personal crisis. While we might wish for God to guide us through peace and certainty, sometimes He uses the hard moments to do the deepest work in us. It's in those moments of brokenness that we start asking the real questions. Who am I without this job? Without this relationship? Without this title? This plan? This comfort? These are the questions that lead to growth, the ones that peel away our illusions and bring us closer to our true purpose. Loss, too, can carry profound guidance. The absence of something we valued, whether it's a person, a dream, or a sense of security, can open the space for something new to enter. Doesn't mean the pain of that loss is minimized or forgotten. Grief is real and it has its own timeline. But often in the space that loss creates, we find a deeper understanding of life, of ourselves, and of God. Sometimes what we lose wasn't meant to go with us into the next chapter. Or sometimes what we lose was never truly ours to hold forever. When we lose something precious, we learn how to surrender. We learn that not everything is within our control. And that lesson, while painful, can lead us to a more honest, humble relationship with the divine. Failure is another area where divine guidance often hides. In a culture that celebrates constant success and progress, failure feels like the ultimate shame. But what if failure is simply redirection? What if it's not about what went wrong, but about what's being made right behind the scenes? Sometimes we're so determined to make something work that we miss the signs it's not meant for us. And so it fails, not to crush us, but to free us, to push us away from a path that leads to emptiness or harm and toward a future that holds more peace, more fulfillment, more alignment with who we really are. It's easy to see God in the blessings, in the answered prayers, in the things that go smoothly. But true faith is forged in the fire of uncertainty. It's in the season of waiting, of not knowing, of crying out for answers and hearing none, that our trust is tested and refined. That's when we find out what we really believe. And that's where God often does His most powerful work. Not in the resolution, but in the wrestle. And the days when we have nothing left but hope. In the nights when we feel alone, but choose to pray anyway. These are the sacred places where strength is born. There are countless stories of people who thought they were being broken, only to realize later that they were being rebuilt. A dream job lost led to the start of a calling. A painful breakup opened the door to a relationship rooted in real love. A failure in one season made room for a breakthrough in the next. These stories remind us that pain is not the end. When we let God into our pain, when we allow Him to walk with us through our sorrow, we begin to see how even our most difficult moments are full of divine purpose. But recognizing divine guidance in difficulty doesn't mean denying the pain or pretending everything is fine. It means holding the tension between grief and growth, between confusion and trust. It means choosing to believe that even when life doesn't go the way we planned, it might still be going the way it's meant to. That the hands which seem to be taking something away are the same hands preparing something greater for us. When we look back on our hardest moments, we often see that they were turning points. Moments that awakened us, redirected us, or shaped us into stronger, wiser people. What we thought would break us ended up building us. What we thought we couldn't live without became the thing that pushed us to grow. And though we wouldn't have chosen the pain, we come to be grateful for what it taught us. So if you're in a season of difficulty right now, know that you're not alone. Know that pain does not mean absence. That failure is not the end of your story. That loss, as devastating as it feels, can still hold purpose. God is not far from the brokenhearted. In fact, He may be closer than ever, guiding you through the storm, shaping your soul in ways that only pain can accomplish. These moments aren't easy, but they aren't wasted either. Sometimes the most painful chapters lead to the most beautiful ones. And sometimes what feels like the hardest part of your journey is the exact place where God is leading you home. Trusting God means letting go of total control. Faith requires belief in a bigger picture, even when we don't understand the current moment. That's one of the hardest lessons we face in life. From a young age, we're taught that control brings safety. If we can plan every step, prepare for every outcome, and manage all the moving pieces, then somehow everything will turn out the way we want. But life doesn't work that way. As much as we try to organize, predict, or force our circumstances, there are always things that slip beyond our grasp. Plans fall apart, people change, unexpected obstacles appear. And in those moments, control disappears, and all we're left with is the choice to trust or not. Trusting God isn't just a warm feeling or a spiritual phrase. It's an act of surrender. It's waking up in the middle of uncertainty and choosing to believe that you're not alone. It's letting go of the need to have all the answers and instead resting in the belief that God has a plan, even if you can't see it yet. That kind of faith isn't always easy. It doesn't come naturally to those of us who like to fix, solve, and predict. But it's in the moments when we're brought to the end of our own strength that we truly begin to understand the power of trust. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up responsibility or effort. It doesn't mean passivity. It means acknowledging that no matter how hard we try, we can't force every outcome, and that's okay. Trusting God means doing what we can with the gifts and knowledge we have, and then releasing the outcome into His hands. It's believing that He sees the entire path, not just the steps right in front of us. And sometimes that path will take us to places we didn't expect, places of waiting, disappointment, or change. But those places aren't detours. They're part of the journey. When we try to hold on to control too tightly, we often end up carrying burdens we were never meant to carry. We stress about what's next, we obsess over decisions, and we try to force clarity in areas where there's only meant to be trust. But when we release our grip and place our future in God's hands, a new kind of peace begins to grow. Not because the circumstances suddenly make sense, but because we've decided to stop trying to be the one in charge of everything. We recognize that our knowledge is limited, our perspective is narrow, and we are not meant to play the role of God in our own lives. Faith calls us to a deeper kind of wisdom, the wisdom to walk forward even when we don't have the full map. It invites us to trust that each step we take is guided by something greater than our own understanding. The kind of trust isn't blind. It's rooted in the knowledge of who God is, His faithfulness, His goodness, His care for us, even in the small details. And over time, as we look back, we begin to see the quiet evidence of His presence, how things came together, how a closed door led to a better opportunity, how what we thought was a setback became a setup for something greater. Sometimes we resist letting go of control because we fear that if we don't manage everything, things will fall apart. But there's freedom in admitting that we're not the ones holding the world together. God is. And He's better at it than we'll ever be. There will be seasons when we don't understand what's happening, plans will unravel, prayers will go unanswered, and we'll feel like we're standing in the middle of chaos with no explanation. But faith isn't built on understanding every moment. It's built on believing in the one who sees beyond the moment. It's choosing to stay grounded in trust, even when we're surrounded by uncertainty. That kind of faith doesn't mean we won't feel fear or doubt. It means we don't let those feelings define our response. Letting go also means being open to the idea that God's plan might look different from ours. Sometimes we're so attached to how we think life should unfold that we miss the better story God is writing. We cling to specific outcomes, relationships, or timelines, and when they don't happen the way we imagined, we think we failed or that God has forgotten us, but often it's in the letting go of our version of the story that we make room for His. And His story, even if it includes hardship, is always rooted in redemption, growth, and love. There's something deeply freeing about not having to know everything. It allows us to live with more openness, more gratitude, and more presence. We stop living in the pressure of what might happen tomorrow and start focusing on the grace that's available today. Trust becomes a daily choice, not a one-time decision. And each time we choose it, we grow stronger in our faith. So, if you find yourself in a place where control is slipping away, where the future feels unclear and the answers just aren't coming, take heart. That's not a sign that things are falling apart. It may be the exact place where faith begins to grow. Let go, not in fear but in confidence, that the one who holds the universe also holds your life. He sees what you cannot see, knows what you do not know, and loves you more deeply than you can imagine. In that trust, you will find peace, even in the unknown. Perception is key to recognizing purpose. A shift in mindset from why is this happening to me to what is this teaching me opens the door to spiritual insight. Life is full of experiences that catch us off guard, moments that feel unfair, confusing, or even cruel. When these moments come, it's easy to slip into a place of frustration, fear, or self-pity. We start asking why. Why did this happen now? Why me? Why this way? That question, while natural, can often lead us in circles. It can trap us in a mindset of victimhood, where we see ourselves as powerless, tossed around by forces we can't control. But something powerful happens when we take that same experience and ask a different question. Instead of asking why, we ask what. What can I learn from this? What is this trying to show me? What part of me is being invited to go? This shift in perception doesn't change the reality of what we're going through, but it changes how we respond to it. It moves us from resistance to openness, from confusion to curiosity, from despair to discovery. And that change, while internal, is often the very thing that begins to transform our external situation. When we see life as something that happens to us, we feel stuck. But when we see it as something that is shaping us, molding us, preparing us, we step into a place of spiritual empowerment. We begin to understand that even the hard things have meaning. Many of the most profound lessons in life come wrapped in discomfort. Pain reveals what matters most. Loss teaches us about value. Failure teaches us about resilience. Rejection teaches us about identity. These experiences are not easy, but they are rich with wisdom if we're willing to look for it. And the ability to find that wisdom begins with perception. It's not about pretending everything is fine or ignoring how hard life can be. It's about being willing to believe that even in our suffering, there's a deeper invitation waiting to be heard. This mindset doesn't come automatically. It requires intention. It means catching ourselves in moments of negativity or blame and gently guiding our thoughts towards something more productive. It means developing the spiritual muscle to ask, even in tears, what is this here to teach me? That question doesn't always bring immediate clarity. Sometimes the lesson is revealed slowly over time, but the act of asking it shifts our posture. It places us in a state of listening, of openness, and of readiness to grow. When we approach life this way, we start to see purpose in unexpected places. We start to notice how one painful experience led us to a relationship, an opportunity, or an inner strength we never would have discovered otherwise. We see how what we thought was the worst thing turned out to be the very thing that brought us back to ourselves, or back to God. We begin to understand that nothing is wasted, not even the suffering, because it all becomes part of our formation. It's part of our story, part of how we are being prepared for. This kind of perception is a spiritual gift, but it's also a practice. It grows with use. The more we apply it, the more natural it becomes. We learn to pause before reacting. We learn to look deeper before we judge an experience as good or bad. We learn to trust that life has layers we can't always see at first glance. And in that trust we find peace. Not because everything makes sense, but because we believe it eventually will. It also teaches us compassion. When we view our own pain as purposeful, we become more understanding of others in their pain. We stop rushing to fix or explain what someone else is going through and instead learn to sit with them in their process. We understand that sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer is not advice, but presence. A quiet knowing that life is always teaching, always shaping, always calling us deeper. Perception turns obstacles into opportunities. It transforms trials into training. It takes what could be the end of our story and makes it the beginning of something new. That doesn't mean we won't have moments of doubt, fear, or anger. We will. But those moments don't define us. What defines us is how we choose to see them. Whether we get stuck asking why, or whether we dare to ask what. Over time, we begin to see how much power we truly have, not over every circumstance, but over how we choose to experience it. And in that power lies freedom. We stop being victims of circumstance and start becoming students of life. And slowly, with each lesson learned, we draw closer to the purpose that was always waiting to be discovered. So when the hard moments come, as they inevitably will, remember that perception shapes reality. Choose to believe that life is not happening against you, but for you. That even in your confusion or pain, there is something to be gained, something to be understood, something to be awakened. Ask what it is, be willing to listen, and let that answer, however quiet or slow it may be, lead you toward insight, healing, and a deeper sense of meaning. Because sometimes all it takes to recognize your purpose is to change the way you see. There are no true accidents in a life guided by faith. When viewed through the lens of belief, every event has potential meaning and direction. That doesn't mean everything will feel good or make sense right away. Life is filled with unexpected twists, moments that seem unfair, losses that cut deeply, and changes that arrive without warning. But when you live with faith, there's a quiet confidence that begins to grow, a steady trust that nothing is wasted, even the moments that seem out of place. The disruptions and disappointments are all somehow part of a greater plan. It's easy to look at life as a series of random events. We often chalk things up to coincidence or luck, assuming that most of what happens is out of anyone's control and disconnected from purpose. But faith teaches us something different. Faith says there's an order, a design, even when we can't see it. It says that the events of our lives, both the beautiful and the painful, they may not all be understood in a moment, but they are not without meaning. Every encounter, every delay, every closed door has the potential to be part of something bigger than we imagine. When something doesn't go the way we hoped, our first instinct is often to resist. We question it, try to fix it, or wish it away. But faith challenges us to pause and look again. What if this moment, even in its discomfort, is trying to teach us something? What if it's redirecting us toward a better path, or preparing us for something we cannot yet comprehend? Belief allows us to explore these questions, to view life not as a string of random occurrences, but as a carefully woven story, filled with depth and direction. Sometimes it takes time to see the meaning. There are experiences we go through that leave us confused and hurting, and we may not understand their purpose until much later. But as the years go by, we often find ourselves looking back with new eyes. We begin to see how certain events shaped us, how they introduced us to people who changed our lives, or how they helped us let go of things that were quietly holding us back. What once seemed like an accident becomes something sacred in hindsight. The pieces that didn't make sense begin to fit together. This way of seeing doesn't deny the pain of life. Faith doesn't ignore reality or sugarcoat suffering. It simply offers a deeper perspective. It says that even our most difficult moments can serve a purpose, that even the messiest parts of our journey can carry wisdom. That doesn't mean every tragedy has an easy explanation, or that we should be quick to assign meaning to every hardship. It means we remain open to the idea that even in chaos, God is still working. Even in loss, there may be seeds of something new. When we believe our lives are guided, we begin to walk differently. We stop rushing to control every outcome and start paying attention to what each moment might be revealing. We begin to ask better questions. Not how do I get past this, but what is this asking of me? We become more present, more reflective, and more connected to our inner life. We start to trust that the events we experience are not just random noise, but part of a symphony we don't yet fully hear. In the details of our everyday lives, we start noticing divine patterns. A phone call that came at just the right time. A door that closed but protected us from something we didn't see. A conversation that sparked a change in direction. These things often feel small at first, but over time we begin to recognize them as part of the sacred rhythm of life. They are reminders that we're not alone, that something greater is gently guiding us, even through the unknown. Living with this kind of faith also brings peace. It doesn't mean we won't struggle or feel afraid, but it means we don't have to carry the burden of every uncertainty. We can release the need to have all the answers, knowing that there's a plan unfolding, even if we can't yet see the full picture. This peace doesn't come from everything going right. It comes from believing that everything has a reason and that we are being led even when the path is unclear. There's comfort in knowing that nothing in your life is a wasted moment. Every step, every detour, every unexpected turn is part of a divine narrative. Some chapters are filled with joy and clarity, others are marked by loss or confusion. But they all belong. They all shape who we are becoming and how we understand our place in the world. When you choose to see your life through the lens of belief, you stop asking if things are happening to you and start wondering how they are happening for you. You realize that the disappointments may be divine redirections, that the silence may be a space for growth, that the long wait might be preparation for something you're not yet ready to hold. There are no true accidents in a life guided by faith. Everything is part of the process. Everything can serve a purpose. It's not always about knowing exactly what that purpose is in the moment. It's about trusting that there is one. That belief changes how we live, how we love, and how we move forward through every season of life. With eyes wide open, hearts grounded in trust, and a quiet confidence that we are being led every step of the way.